Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar by HOTREC, placed by HOTREC and TOPOSOPHY. We're very pleased you can join us. I think people are just coming into the webinar now, so we're going to just wait, I think about 1 minute, just to make sure everybody is with us, and then we'll be able to get started. If you're just joining us, welcome. I hope you're having a good morning or evening or afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We are just waiting for some more people to join the webinar, and then we'll get started in the next minute or two. We have some more people joining us now, so welcome. We're just bringing more people into the webinar as we speak, and we'll be starting very shortly. Okay, well, I think we have a good number of people with us now, so I'm going to get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar hosted by HOTREC, which is the umbrella association of hotels, restaurants, bars, and cafes in Europe, together with TOPOSOPHY, placemaking and marketing agency. My name is Peter Jordan, and I am TOPOSOPHY's head of insights. Wherever you are watching or listening from today, we're really glad that you could join us, and we hope that you do find this webinar useful. Firstly, to give you an idea of the structure of this webinar, we will shortly be joined by Marie-Audreyne, who is the Director General of HOTREC, who will give a welcome message and some opening remarks. Following that, I will give a presentation of around 20 minutes. I'm going to set the scene, raise the main issues that occur when we're talking about artificial intelligence and the customer experience within the area of hospitality. And then we're going to have a panel discussion. We're delighted to be joined by two experts in this field. And we, of course, look forward to your questions as well. We know that this is an area where many people have a lot of interest, doubts, and we hope that we can help clear some of those up on this morning's session. You're welcome to submit questions in the chat box. We have a series of questions that we're going to ask our experts, so maybe we'll be asking one of your questions too. But you may be interested to know if you can get hold of the slides from this presentation, in which case we ask you to contact HOTREC, and Marie can give you some more information on how to do that. So without further ado, I would like to hand straight over to our very good friend, Marie-Audreyne, who is the Director General of HOTREC, to give some welcome opening remarks. Marie.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning to you all. It's a real pleasure to host with you and the TOPOSOPHY team this event this morning. Thank you very much, of course, and to the panelists, and we have really a great lineup of expertise this morning. And really their willingness to share, and of course thank you very much TOPOSOPHY for partnering with us for this event. So my name is Marie-Audreyne, I'm the Director General of HOTREC, which is European umbrella organization representing the hospitality sector at large, and really we have a willingness to foster exchange, collaboration, and discussion among all our members. I mean, a couple of numbers. I mean, it's millions of business hospitality in Europe. Over 90% are SMEs, very small micro family enterprise, and it's about 11 to 12 million employees. So it's a very large family that we are representing. Artificial intelligence, AI, has become really a buzzword and a reality in the recent years. Its impact is being observed, measured in many different sectors. And of course, hospitality is no exception to that. And this technology will undoubtedly change the way customers perceive and experience travel and hospitality. And from the HOTREC point of view, of course, we see AI leveraged by powerful online platforms. We really strongly believe that hospitality SMEs should also be in a position to scale up their business using the technology. So we really wanted to bring that conversation today through a webinar. They have been, and there will be more coming up, but I think it's really interesting to help to better understand the challenges, as you were saying, Peter, but also the opportunities that AI technology can bring to the hospitality sector and exchange with experts and also with people online. So really, again, thank you very much to all of you for joining today, and thank you to our experts. We look forward to really insightful, interesting presentation, but also lively exchange and engaging discussion. Yes, we'll be happy at HOTREC to share, of course, the slides. So please contact us at hotrec@hotrec.eu. It's really a process, the start of the conversation, and thank you again, and I really look forward to this morning exchange. Over to you, Peter.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you for your kind welcome. So let me just talk to you a little bit more about the presentation today. As I mentioned, let me introduce myself first of all. I'm Peter Jordan, TOPOSOPHY's Head of Insights. In case you haven't heard of TOPOSOPHY, we are a placemaking and marketing agency specializing in strategy and research, marketing and events, and we are proud to have had a long-standing collaboration with HOTREC for more than 7 years, researching and analyzing a wide range of different issues that affect the hospitality industry today. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Juanjo Rodriguez of the Hotels Network and Simone Puorto of Travel Singularity. Both, good morning, buenos días, Juanjo, and I know buongiorno, Simone. I'm going to explain a little bit more about their profile and obviously a bit more of the relevance to this particular topic once we get to the panel discussion. But we're extremely pleased to have you with us here today, so thank you. So a quick reminder then about today's agenda. First, we are going to map the different terms that are being used in this area so that we're all clear on definitions before we move forward. We're going to look at how generative artificial intelligence, generative AI, is being used to enhance the customer experience. And then we're going to consider the practical uses of generative AI in the hospitality industry in the very near future. So, firstly, I'm sure you have noticed how quickly the artificial intelligence is a topic that has shot up the agenda. You've seen it, I'm sure, in the media. And this has happened in a very short space of time because there have been some recent, very rapid and interesting developments in this area. It's already being applied across various different industries. Obviously, then the fame of ChatGPT has pushed it up the agenda very quickly. But as we're going to see today, ChatGPT is not the only model or the only, obviously, only company that's relevant to this area. It's being used especially with real interest in areas which are customer facing. And this is an area where there's likely to be a lot more development in the coming years. And it's also in interactions within customer facing roles where those interactions with customers are often quite labor intensive. So it is an area which is moving quickly and requires our attention. Why does it require our attention? Well, ultimately, we do need to stay ahead of the curve or risk falling behind. We have seen how the development of other technologies in the past has tended to often take the hospitality industry or tourism industry in general a little bit by surprise. It's taken some time to catch up, and then of course there are regulatory issues around that too. It's important to keep track of a fast-moving and critical new development. And ultimately, we want to help future-proof hospitality businesses for sustainable growth and success. And of course, embrace innovation, which is also always important. So then let's look at the three main terms that we're going to hear a lot about today: artificial intelligence, generative AI, and large language models. Now, artificial intelligence. Now, according to ChatGPT's own definition of artificial intelligence, which of course we have validated and researched as well widely, it is essentially this, as we can see here, it's a technology that enables machines to perform tasks that typically would require human intelligence, like learning or reasoning or problem solving. It allows computers to mimic human-like behaviors and make decisions based on data. Now, with the definitions we're going to look at here, we're sort of going from a higher level to a more granular level. Now, to help you understand a little bit about how artificial intelligence is being used, it's already touching the traveler directly and powering advanced analytics in back-end travel processes. So you can see here the classic travel life cycle. Well, you've heard of the classic travel life cycle. Well, this graphic that you can see on the screen shows how artificial intelligence powered technologies are going to play an increasingly important role at each of the 6 stages of the travel life cycle. And the boxes that you can see at the side there, they show the AI powered technologies themselves that we expect to see more of. So essentially, AI promises to transform the hospitality industry by doing things, for example, such as enhancing hotel reputations, driving revenue, and elevating the customer experience to the next level, particularly when it comes to concise, continuous, and efficient interactions across different languages. That's just to give you one example of how we see its use being put into practice. And I'm going to talk and explain some more examples later. So just to give you an idea of how fast this has grown, this was the time taken to reach 1 million users. Netflix, it took 3.5 years. Airbnb took 2.5 years. Facebook took 10 months. Generative AI, as you can see at the bottom there, took just 5 days to reach 1 million users. ChatGPT crossed that 1 million user mark after it was made public in November 2022. So obviously this is why it's become talked about so quickly and so recently. So that rapid take up is, I mean, we're likely to see this more with different emerging technologies in the future. But this just gives you an idea of the scale of which it's become popular and used so quickly. So to move on to our next term then, generative AI, generative artificial intelligence. Essentially, as we can see here, it's a subset of AI that focuses on creating new content or generating outputs such as text or images or music. It does use large data sets to learn patterns and produce creative and human-like outputs. What do we mean by this? Well, as this graphic shows, the generative AI landscape is continuously evolving, and it can be divided at the moment into 6 key areas. So you can see them in the boxes here. In fact, generated output from generative AI is very similar to human-generated content. It can be text, imagery, audio, and synthetic data. And this is where you can see when we've used the term text to X. So essentially, by putting in input, by giving orders in text, can generate these various different types of content. So this graphic then shows how businesses are quickly using generative AI to help with things such as advanced search, content generation, data augmentation, customer management, as well as other things across various different sectors. Of course, this is not just the hospitality industry we can see here. Let's then look at our other major term today, language models. So these are part of AI systems. Essentially, they are programs that use large data sets to understand and generate human-like text. By analyzing patterns and relationships in language, which they do on a very extremely large scale, they can have conversations, answer questions, and assist with various tasks. And I'm sure you have already perhaps you've already been playing with systems such as ChatGPT yourself and understood how this is starting to work. Now, I'm sure you've heard of ChatGPT by now. It's actually one of the advanced language models that is powered by generative AI. It's designed to engage in conversational interactions with users. By leveraging vast amounts of data, ChatGPT can generate human-like responses, stimulate conversations, and deliver helpful information. Now, as we can see, this is an area which is moving very quickly. And just one example of this is actually employment. It's skills that are being used in this area. The world of prompt engineering is now considered one of the hottest jobs in tech. Companies are looking for ways to help train and adapt AI tools to get the most out of these models. And this can provide results which are not always, because of course, they can provide results which are not always correct or appropriate. So there is huge demand at the moment for the people who are specialized in being able to use this and adapt it to individual companies' needs. It's actually part of a dramatic increase in demand for workers who can understand these tools. In fact, just to give you one example, according to LinkedIn data that was shared with Time magazine, the number of posts on LinkedIn, job posts, referring to generative AI has increased 36 times in comparison to last year. And the number of job postings containing GPT rose by 51% just between 2021 and 2022. In fact, some of these job postings are being targeted to anyone, even those without a background in computer science or technology. So we can see how quickly the demand is rising for people who have skills in this area. As we can see here, this is looking at the sort of emerging marketplace and ecosystem growth that's occurring. I'm sure that if we come back in 6 months or 1 year, this graphic will already have changed somewhat. But as we can see here, ChatGPT, we can see it there in the second column, is actually just one of many tools which have sprung onto the market. In total, spending on the global generative AI market is actually expected to reach about 42.6 billion by the end of this year. So this is just one of the major areas of development. Another area, of course, is the legal area. That's never too far away when we're discussing the implications of working with AI. Now, this technology, as I'm sure we're already aware, is set to have a very profound impact on many areas of life. So lawmakers have been scrambling to understand the possible impacts of AI and develop rules for using it. And just last Wednesday, lawmakers in Europe signed off on the world's first set of comprehensive rules for artificial intelligence. This cleared an important hurdle, actually, as authorities across the globe are trying to rein in AI or try to understand it and try to modify regulations in order to adapt to what AI can do. The European Parliament vote is actually one of the last steps before the rule becomes law, and it could start to act as a model for other places that are working on similar regulations. So what about ChatGPT specifically then on the legal question? The original measure that was brought in actually barely mentioned chatbots, mainly just requiring them to be labeled so that users know that they are interacting with a machine. However, of course, things have been moving very quickly in this area, and negotiators later added provisions to cover general purpose artificial intelligence like ChatGPT after it has exploded in popularity. One key addition then is a requirement to thoroughly document any copyright material that was used to teach AI systems how to generate text, images, video, and music that resemble human work, as you can see on the graphic here. So then, onto the hospitality industry. It's a really good question, and I'd be interested to hear what our panelists have to say about this later. Is the hospitality industry even welcome? Is it even ready to welcome artificial intelligence with open arms? It's a really relevant question here. Now, for the time being, it seems, again, I'll be interested to hear what our panelists have to say on this topic. It seems at the moment that hospitality SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises in particular, are generally experimenting with ChatGPT. So they're in that sort of experimental phase with different processes and individual tools. For example, the technology giants have been launching fresh partnerships with online travel agents, online booking platforms, and leading hospitality brands to sort of test generative AI integrations into their day-to-day operations. So I'd like to then show you a few examples of how this is already being done. What are the sort of collaborations which we're already seeing in this area? Well, first example is Expedia. It has teamed up with OpenAI. Expedia has made the beta launch of a new app, in-app travel planning experience, and it's been powered by ChatGPT. Expedia members can now start an open-ended conversation in the Expedia app and then get recommendations based on the chat. New trip planning experience will bring in intelligent shopping by automatically saving hotels discussed in this conversation into a certain trip in the app. And this will help members stay organized and make it easier for them to start planning their trip. Secondly, another example is OpenTable, which has teamed up with OpenAI. This is essentially, it's about offering restaurant recommendations via ChatGPT. The integration allows users to receive personal recommendations based on their preferences and their location. And then they get a direct link in order to make their booking on OpenTable once they have made a decision about where they want to visit. And you can have, you can see a bit of an example here just on the screen of that type of typical interaction. Thirdly, we have the Palazzo Versace in Dubai. It's teamed up with Ask Suite. This is about creating an AI-powered chatbot, which is called Aura. It's integrated with ChatGPT functionality in order to improve the guest experience. So that, for example, is around areas such as reducing response time, giving better enhanced customer support, and understanding the online behavior of the hotel's guests. It will also be able to serve guests better via the website, via WhatsApp, Google, and serve as a more holistic guide in order to help guests book a room or suite and make their decision over their purchase. Just another couple of examples to show you here. Wendy's, the restaurant chain, the fast food restaurant chain in the US. It's teamed up with Google Cloud. In June, the burger chain will start testing just this month. It started testing the use of Google AI technology at different locations in Ohio. Basically, it's about understanding customer requests better, generating responses to frequently asked questions. And the aim is to make ordering a lot more efficient and avoid mistakes and create a much more personal experience. And finally, in this recent set of examples, the hotels network, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this from Juanjo, announced the release of an AI assistant, a tool that empowers hoteliers to be able to produce tailored website messages that align with their brand and enhance the user experience. So I look forward to hearing a bit more about that later. So I'm sure you're interested in this. Perhaps is one of the main reasons why you joined us today, is to help understand then the practical issues, practical uses that we are likely to see in the near future in hospitality, the practical uses of generative AI. Let's have a look through some of them now. We have these main areas. Firstly, it's around customer service and real-time support. So around handling customer inquiries, answering very common questions that crop up from customers about things like amenities, hours of operations, and reservations. I think at first we're likely to see it focusing on these very sort of standardized questions. For example, what time is the pool or gym open? Where can I park? That kind of thing, the sort of information you see on the website. This is likely to become much more complex over time, the sort of support that these tools can offer. So just to give some specific examples, we can help with things like streamlining the check-in and check-out processes, make sure that guests have a seamless and efficient experience. Also helping to facilitate transactions, so allowing guests to place orders, order food, that kind of thing, and request services through a chat-based interface. Even around things like food and beverages, the restaurant experience, by enabling, for example, to be able to give menu recommendations, advising on dietary restrictions and special requests as well. And then finally, things like, as we've seen, handling table reservations and giving real-time information about how long someone will have to wait before they can get a table, or around the food service, and just being able to reassure guests with a much more sort of up-to-date schedule. Second area is around giving personalized recommendations. Obviously, this works based on understanding, as we saw the case in Dubai, it's about understanding how guests are using the website, how they're interacting already, understanding their profile to be able to give them much more personalized recommendations. So then by using algorithms in AI, we think hospitality businesses are going to be able to analyze vast amounts of customer data in order to give those much more personalized recommendations. What do we mean by that? Well, it's around, for example, suggesting local attractions, events, or personalized itineraries based upon guests' own preferences or their past behavior. It can even be things like recommending dishes and beverages that are tailored to individual tastes or their dietary restrictions. Or, for example, you're not recommending something which, for example, if you know that your guest is a vegetarian or they've already said that they have certain dietary requirements, you're avoiding mistakes as well by making sure that you're targeting your specific menu options to them. And then providing dynamic suggestions based on real-time factors such as the location and the weather, giving recommendations on local activities, or, for example, if it's going to be extremely hot during the day, to recommend to avoid going out at certain times. And then obviously pushing personalized promotions to guests as well. The third area is around marketing and content creation. So, for example, making your life a lot easier when it comes to generating website content, optimizing those search engine rankings, and then creating really compelling descriptions that will resonate with a target audience of hospitality businesses. Crucially, of course, there's increasingly the possibility to do this across various different languages, which is an area which businesses commonly struggle with. And it also, of course, can curate and suggest really engaging visual content and learn about which content works best in order to captivate potential customers. So just to give some specific examples in this area, automate that creation of social media posts to make sure that you're consistently putting out content which is relevant and attractive and which gets good engagement. Analyzing trends and customer preferences to suggest certain amenities or menu pairings or offerings based upon what you know their individual tastes are. And then also then contribute to some of the more labor-intensive areas, such as creating newsletters or delivering personalized, timely messages based upon their past interactions. If you know, for example, someone may be interested in a winter break, that's an opportunity to step in there because you know that they visited outside of the peak season. And then streamlining responses to customer reviews and then handling complaints as well, or at least certainly in the opening stages before then passing to a human being. Another area that's interesting is around staff recruitment and training. It's an area which we know the hospitality industry across Europe has struggled with in the last couple of years. It's increasingly important to be able to get people's attention in the first place with enticing job descriptions that can attract top talent, as well as doing things such as creating training manuals, standardized training modules, and incorporating best practices and policies. And this will help then to ensure consistency and efficiency in staff training processes. So it gives a couple of examples then, creating those training materials for specific departments such as front desk operations, housekeeping, food, beverage services. Also, of course, staff will need training in the use of AI tools as well. And then in things like restaurants, bars, and cafes, also developing certain training programs to ensure that they can deliver high quality service to guests. Now, I have explained us 4 practical use areas there, but as ever, there are some important initial issues to consider, and no doubt that this area it will change rapidly, and it's something for us to consider even more deeply as time goes on. There are some certain capabilities and limits. There are certain capabilities that the AI tools have and that large language models have. But of course, there are certain limitations too. And perhaps one of those that is best known is around that sort of cutoff time, because ChatGPT is using data which went up to around September 2021. And of course, the internet generates huge amounts of data on a daily basis. And there is a certain, obviously, as ChatGPT will tell you itself, it only is able to supply information based upon the data that it was analyzing up to that point. There is also the risk of training data bias. So it's gradually, of course, incorporating certain biases into the information that it's giving. And then obviously hallucinations. So for example, if you ask it to give you examples of certain things, it may come up with some false examples based upon its assumptions. And this is where obviously human is needed on this. And then, and I think this final point is an extremely big one, which no doubt we will be talking about as well. It's the legal and ethical considerations of using this. And obviously exploring, the giving over certain powers to computers, and where we know that staff were able to handle certain areas as well. So it's that balance between what a human can help us with and what a computer can help us achieve effectively as well. So I have touched on a lot of areas in my presentation, and we have now a good amount of time to be able to have an interesting conversation with our panelists, who I'd now like to introduce. We're going to move on to some questions in a second, but I'd first just like to give this introduction. I'm very pleased to be joined first of all by Simone Puorto, who's currently based in Milan, I believe. Simone is an advisor with more than 20 years of experience. He's a keynote speaker, a published author, and organizer of the first travel and hospitality event in the metaverse. He's also an MBA lecturer for business schools, and he's a specialist in Web3 and a board member of various important tech companies. And we're also very pleased to be joined by Juanjo Rodriguez, who is founder of the Hotels Network. He is a digital and marketing entrepreneur and the founder of this technology company, as I said, Hotels Network. The company works with hotel brands globally to grow their direct bookings. And previously, Juanjo founded Duplex, which is a popular marketing agency in Spain. It has a focus on educating hoteliers with the benefits of new technology, such as predictive personalization and machine learning, so very relevant to today's session. And Juanjo is a regular speaker at hospitality events and educational organizations. So welcome to you both. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, Simone and Juanjo, we actually prepared a few questions which I'd like to just talk through with you. I'm very interested to get your impression on these. And then, of course, we will be welcoming questions from our audience. So we know that HOTREC's network and the European hospitality industry in general is made up of a lot of small independent hotel businesses, small chains as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in your opinion, perhaps Simone first. When it comes to testing AI in the hospitality businesses, and we've seen some practical examples, where would you recommend a small hospitality business to start?
So first of all, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with Juanjo. And I think before we even move into the technical part of the question, the main question that hotels should ask themselves is, what is hospitality and what is the logistics of travel? Because we tend to confuse the two, but they're not the same thing, right? And there's no added value, for example, in manually charging a credit card or manually adding data into a PMS. To a certain extent, there's not even so much added value in checking in and checking out. And I always make this example. let's say you need to take a plane, right? You don't go to the airport 3 hours before because you want the human interaction with the people at the people at the desk, right? And so for us now, it's pretty normal that we just, if you're like me, you just go to the airport like 5 minutes before the flight, and and you just go and self-check in, and you go straight to the plane. So I think that is the main question: is will the guest experience be diminished by replacing biological stuff with artificial intelligence? Now, if the answer is no, that is where you need to implement technology. And I think, especially for my generation and older guys, we have this mental bias when it comes to artificial intelligence that I think is due to too many B movie science fiction movies that we've seen in the 80s, right? So when we think about artificial intelligence in hospitality, it's almost blasphemy because we think about cyborgs taking over, or dinosaurs checking us in. But good technology, and especially artificial intelligence, really works like magic. It's behind the curtain so that people can focus on what they do best, and that is taking care of guests. So before to wrap it up, before even getting into which technology should I use? Should I go with a plugin? Should I go with that vendor? Should I integrate this? The main question is, if I switch from humans to AI in this particular process, will something change in terms of perception? Now, if it changes for the best, go with AI. If it changes for the worst, stay with humans. If it doesn't change at all, go with AI. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, very, very good way of putting it. Thank you, Simone. Juanjo, what's your take on this question then? Where would you recommend a small hospitality business to start?
Yeah, so I agree with Simone in the sense that, let me put another framework. There are basically two very broad elements where, let's say, the operations and the communication / marketing / sales to the customer, the user experience. There are places in the operations that are internal that your guest would never even see. Those places are relatively obvious if there's something you can do there, because it doesn't have the impact that Simone was pointing at.
Mm-hmm.
That's more on reducing cost, not necessarily on doing something better. And then you have the client-facing set of things, and there are many of the things we've seen so far are in this special area, which is, by the way, the one we now have more knowledge. I think this idea that Simone pointed to, that when you were talking now to a person, can you do the same thing with a non-person and maintain the same level of quality? And in the transactional points, that's relatively obvious. For example, some of the check-in that you were doing, why you don't really need anyone there unless you want to provide a specific type of service at reception or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think there are multiple areas, but the more obvious ones are the ones that are text-based. Because when we look at the AI, I think you did a great job in presenting everything that is going on. I would argue that we are in a not symmetric point on the quality of the different services. So the big innovation, the fact that we have this discussion is because of ChatGPT in particular, mm-hmm. because the other efforts have been going there for many years. But ChatGPT was a breakthrough. It was a lot of people around the world have been working on this for many years with very little to show. And then suddenly it became an explosion because the quality was so much better than before. Mm-hmm. So and that's language. The other things that are not language are still a step behind in general. No? It's the pre-ChatGPT place. You can argue maybe that images are pretty good, but it's not nearly where the other one, the language is. So things where language is involved is the more obvious way to go first. And that means creating content, suggesting things, talking to people. That's why the GPT is a general thing, but ChatGPT is one of the more obvious ways to do it, client-facing, because I have been in the past quite critical of chatbots, not because the idea of talking to someone is bad in itself, but the chatbot was really bad quality and no one had a good one. And now suddenly
it would come up with suggestions that weren't relevant, or it just would, and of course it increases the frustration for the customer.
Exactly. Exactly. And now that the level of quality that you have there means that you can use the same technique for many other places. Another thing I would mention here is that there's so much innovation that is happening so fast that is very unlikely that you want to build something yourself. Very unlikely. Because even for tech companies like us, we are doing that decision. Should we build something or use something that someone else is building? Just because of the speed of development. So if you are an operator, it's almost impossible that it would make sense for you to build on your own. It's much better to just use something that someone else is using in this phase. So that would be one way to start, would be to say, what is available there that I think makes sense for me, that I can give it a try. And typically, you can try a few things really quickly and really cheaply. Maybe on a scale it will be different, but to try something is not complex at all.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So actually, I was going to ask a sort of sub question from this, but I see we have Marine Tison, who has just sent a message, sent a question in here. I was going to come to questions at the end, but I will bring it in now. It's about the limitations on accessibility and considering the needs of all travelers to better welcome them into the industry. Basically, the point that some guests are often reluctant and non-experts in using digital and AI tools. At the same time, another point that I was going to make, perhaps the other side of that coin, is that also increasing numbers of guests are comfortable with using these, or perhaps they're a bit more used to it. Especially younger guests perhaps are more used to using chat rather than calling someone, or they're perhaps a bit more used to things like instant messaging. So just interested in your opinion on this. Is it, on one side, do you think that guests ultimately are becoming more used to using, comfortable with this? Or is it worth just waiting to see these services improve so that you can be confident to use them in your business and customer-facing interactions?
Let me put something quickly here before letting Simone answer. I think it's as hoteliers, we are serving basically everyone in the world. So it's impossible that you have a solution that covers everyone. So we should not aspire to that. I think the mistake that we do too often is to say, I need a solution that works 100%. And you know what? A solution that works 60% is much better than zero. So if you are serving maybe just 1/3 of your customers in a way that they consider better, that's great already. You should not try to move everyone in the same direction, because they will not want to do it. Both because the diversity of people is huge in age, in how you adapt to new technology, etc. But also because hoteliers are also very diverse in the stage in which they are in using technological tools. In the same industry, we have people who are extremely advanced using absolutely everything, and you still have people who use nearly nothing, and they are doing okay. Because if they were not doing okay, they would be out of business, and that's not the case.
And I guess, of course, it really depends on who your customer target base is as well, and how comfortable they are too. Yeah, thank you for that, Juanjo. And Simone, what's your take on that question that we saw in the Q&A?
I would say that we should probably start asking ourselves, what is hospitality today? Because that is not the same thing that it used to be 10 years ago. And I think, and I always say that the pandemic, to a certain extent, just accelerated some of the trends that were already going on. And Juanjo is totally right. ChatGPT is great, but just because it's a question of volume of users using it, but it's really nothing new. This kind of technology has been around for a while now. And what is changing is the acceptance of technology in our industry. And let me put it this way. Remember at the very beginning of the pandemic, we've seen guests moving and traveling more to apartments rather than hotels, right? I remember at some point, I think even Booking.com said, look, it's probably better if you book an apartment, right? It's safer. We don't know. It's better if you reduce the contact with other humans. And for a lot of people, this was the first interaction they had, for a lot of travelers, the first interaction they had with hotels with apartments, with humanless hospitality. So you just get in, you put your digicode, you enter the room, you never see the host, right? And for a lot of these travelers, they started thinking, at the end of the day, my experience didn't change that much, right? So this is still hospitality, even if there's no people involved or there's less people involved. So I think that is the main question, right? So if we reduce the number of humans working in hospitality, is this still hospitality or is something else? Now, if we agree that this is still hospitality, then it's pretty obvious where we need to go. And I think in a few years we will see at receptionists making copies of our passports the same way we look at telephone switch operators from movies from the 50s, right? And we will say, look, were we really asking people to do that kind of stuff? And but again, it's not technical. I think that is where the problem is. We talk about AI in the hospitality space more on a technical level. Yeah. I think we need to talk more on a philosophical level. We need to change the mindset.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you. I'd be interested to know what our audience as well think on that. Just to let you know, everybody, that you're welcome to submit more questions via the Q&A button. With our panelists, I'd like to move on to the second question. We have a few questions here. Just very briefly around, you're both specialists, been working in the tech and the hospitality space for quite a while now. What do you think are the main barriers that slowed down digital transformation in the hospitality industry in the past? And how do you think, looking forward, in this area, SMEs can overcome some of those challenges? What would you describe perhaps as the top 3 barriers each to slowing down digital transformation in the past? Juanjo.
Yeah. So I think in every strategy decision, there's 2 elements: how much do you want to do it, and then how hard it is to do it once you decided something. Hospitality, up to the pandemic, was doing really well as a category, as an industry. So you really didn't have the need to transform if you were already doing things and being very profitable. So it was a work in progress. It's a nice to have. I can do that, but it's not a priority. Once the pandemic happened and we went through that mess, then it became much more obvious that you really need to do that, because many processes you couldn't do anymore. The teams are smaller. So now it's a must-have, because you cannot really run a hotel in the future without basically using technology in almost every step. So I think that the first one is that the need is much more clear now than it used to be for all technology in general. And then about how hard it is to put it into place. One of the things that happens in hospitality is that the hospitality is a very fragmented industry, in the sense that there are literally millions of players. If you compare to something else like airlines, for example, there's 500 or so, and hotels that are at least 1 million. So it's completely different. There's a bit of that in the technology provider side of things too. There are so many providers, because you can build something in a market and work with the clients that are near you. And there are good local providers almost everywhere in the world. So when there's a lot of variety of providers, it's confusing to know which one to choose. For example, now one of the main advantages of ChatGPT is there's only one. That's the only thing. That's why it became so popular so quickly, because you don't have any alternatives. So everyone was going to the same place. So I think that this fragmentation is one of the things that has made the process a bit slower than it could have been in other areas.
I see.
And then I think there's another element. Hotels are, I'm using hotels as a generic for any hospitality. It's a hugely complex operation. There are so many things that you have to do right to run a hotel. And technology is one of them. And the client-facing technology is just one of a million things. So if you are, let's say, an OTA, to use someone in our space, an OTA doesn't have any operations. You don't serve customers, you don't see them, you don't take copies of their passports when they arrive at reception at 2 a.m. So obviously you are going to do better the only part you do, which is the technology part. So I think one of the reasons is that Some spaces are much more technology driven because that's your core business. And for hotels, this is one of 7 pieces. And therefore, by definition, you cannot pay as much attention to it.
Thank you. I'm sure we have people, hoteliers with us who are very familiar with that situation today. Thank you. Simone, just very quickly before we go on to the next question, what do you agree with that? Are there other barriers which you think have been faced in the past?
Totally. I would just add another one, and it's partly connected to what Juanjo was saying about the fragmentation of the industry and the fact that we have so many vendors. Now, the problem is that whenever you need to, let's say you want to integrate some level of AI in your operation or the guest experience or the logistics of what you do. Now, the thing is that this system will need to get data, and usually they need to get data from PMSs. And this is where the problem starts, because especially for small independent hotels, especially in Italy and Southern Italy, it's a nightmare. We have so many Mickey Mouse companies with legacy systems, just a monster in the basements. And it's pretty much impossible to build anything on top of that. So just forget about APIs. And this is where the problem begins. So I think that, and I see this, a lot of hotels would like to innovate, and they know they can do better with some level of AI, but they are blocked because they have maybe a 5 or a 10-year contract with a PMS that is sitting somewhere in the basement, and they cannot connect it to anything. So I don't think it's a problem of the new technology. I think it's the problem of all the existing technologies that we do have.
Okay, interesting. Now, I was going to go on to the next question, but we have a very interesting question. We've got some various people, and we're very grateful for people sending in their questions here. I'd like to go to the one currently at the bottom of the list. It's very simple. Besides examples that we've seen of using AI in hospitality in general, how do you think it will penetrate different hotel departments? At the moment, of course, we're seeing the majority of efforts going into marketing and sales, but what do you think at the moment are the implications for things like the front office, F&B, housekeeping, wellness and spa, maintenance? Just do you have any strong opinions on that at the moment around the individual units of a business? Juanjo, you mentioned, of course, that hospitality businesses are complex by their nature.
Yeah, I think more than a department in particular is a better way to look from a process perspective. No? Processes that involve exchange of information are better. Something stupid thing, but if you need to do housekeeping, AI is not going to solve it because you still need to go and prepare the room, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to communicate with the customer for asking for room service, then it's perfectly fine. Actually, in many cases, many people will enjoy not talking to someone. I think one of the key things so hospitality means that I want to treat you right and welcome to my home. In the past, every single industry was hospitality based because that was the only way to do it. But let me give you an example that I think is interesting. If 100 years ago, you went to a shop and everything was over the counter, you ask some person for something you want, they go pick it up and they bring it to you. And then the department store approach came in where you don't do that and you browse by yourself. And now 99% of the cases is in this new way, which has less people. And people don't perceive that as less quality. Actually, many people perceive that as more quality. I think we are in the same case here. The fact that you have been doing something with people doesn't mean that it's the best experience for the end user. It's the only one you could do. And some of those experiences are actually going to be better, and people will prefer those when you don't have people involved because they are more on their own.
Yeah, actually, and we're going to jump around a bit here, but it's interesting you raised the point about different types of customer having feeling more or less comfortable with this or around customer expectations. I'd like actually just to jump onto a question we have here from Eve Deals, who says, do we think that the attitude towards using this technology or interacting, for example, with using ChatGPT, do you think it might be different between different types of guests from the hotel? So, for example, maybe a guest of a 5-star hotel might expect a more personal contact than the guest of a 3- or 4-star hotel. It's probably quite a big generalization, but I wonder, do you have, Simone, do you have an opinion on that?
I got a strong opinion on that.
Go on then, yeah.
Look, I teach at a lot of MBAs, right? And I see always the same problem, that we are teaching these kids that we need to treat all the guests exactly the same way. And that is a problem, right? It's not a question of generation. It's not a question of 5 stars. It's not a question of luxury. It's a question of being humans, and humans are different, right? So there is that guest that wants some level of very high touch, super personalized experience. There is the other guest that not only doesn't want that, but it can be even overwhelming for him or her. Like, to me, and we were having this discussion a few weeks ago with colleagues, and we were talking about what is luxury today. Like, do you think luxury is the guy opening you the door when you go to the breakfast room? Yeah, maybe for some people. To me, that is like human slavery. I will be more happy to see that guy just helping me out with something else that is more like a human interaction. So I don't think the generalization is always wrong. And this is not only when we talk about artificial intelligence, but we need to start thinking that not all guests want to be treated with a high touch kind of approach. Look at me, for example. If you know me, you know that the only thing, like, I travel 150 nights a year. The first thing I want to do when I get to the hotel is get to my room, okay, and probably have a shower. And so the approach with a very, personalized check-in will not work for me, but it will work for the person next to me. And this is where I think we're losing touch with what hospitality is all about, and it's soft skill, empathy, and understanding who is in front of you. And this is not a question of artificial intelligence. I think it's a question that we're forgetting how to do our job. And if you look at job positioning on LinkedIn, when you look for a receptionist, for example, you ask them to be familiar maybe with 25 different software. It looks like we're hiring engineers, and we're forgetting about the soft skill. You need to deal with people. You need to understand people. So again, it's not a tech problem. It's a perception problem.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Maybe we've got questions coming in, and I know we have around 5 minutes left. Maybe we will go just a couple of minutes over because we started a couple of minutes late. I'm actually going to go to one question here. It's our third question, which is quite similar to a couple of questions which have come in. It's around that practical question around cost. So integrating generative AI capabilities in a professional way, for example, with a plugin. Now, obviously, there are many different ways we can do this, so the cost can change. Just to help people understand at the moment the general cost of doing something like this, do you have is there any indication you can give us for Juanjo, for example?
Yeah. So I think that if you are going to use off-the-shelf tools that are being created now, the cost is very low. It's very, very low. If you want to build something yourself and then you need to hire people with data science experience, then it's super high. So that's why I would advise, especially smaller companies, smaller operators, to just go and get something that someone else is building. And then there's a key difference. If you are doing something internally for your own purposes, typically the cost is even lower because the number of people using that is small. And many of these services are charging based on people who use it or quantity of usage. So if you do it internally for back of the office stuff, it's actually very, very affordable. If you do something client-facing, for example, a chatbot that we're going to charge by, I don't know what, interactions, then if you have millions of users or many thousands of users, then it would be a bit more expensive. But in general, I think it's a surprise that everything is actually so affordable. You can argue that the generative AI in particular is a deflationary technology in the sense that it's making things cheaper, not more expensive than before. Almost everything that it's replacing is reducing the cost by 5 times or 10 times what it was doing, even if by providing the search service, not considering that you in many cases provide the better service.
Okay, thank you. Simone, yeah.
I do. Look, again, I do agree. I think we're always trying to reinvent the wheel, okay? And I think that 90% of the time this is not necessary. There's an app for that, and so this is what we probably want to avoid. Now, when we talk about the costs, Juanjo is totally right. A ChatGPT API license could be somewhere around $100 to $500 a month. based on the usage. So we're not talking about like a crazy amount of money, but then you need to develop something, design something, maintaining, and it can become very expensive very quickly. So it's not something a small hotel could do. But yes, what is happening is basically the cost of developing is going down because ChatGPT or a generative AI system can be actually used to do all the low code, for example, for apps, and this is putting the price of development lower than it used to be. So my suggestion would be, unless you really want to do something very, very small, that you just buy the API license and then you get just a few hours of dev and a little maintenance that can be done. But overall, my idea would be just partner with somebody that is already doing it and just don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. So for our final, I'm aware that we are reaching now 10 o'clock. I'd just like to spend a couple of minutes over just to tackle this the final question I'd like to ask, which was number 4. It's around the milestones. This area is moving so quickly, but perhaps by the end of this year, what do you think are some of the milestones that we might see reached in the travel and hospitality industry around the use of generative AI? Any opinions on that, perhaps Juanjo?
So I think we'll tackle the low-hanging fruit first. For example, in our case, in our company that you mentioned in your presentation, one of the things we do is we help personalize websites. So you have to create content to personalize the website. It's obvious that you use AI to create the content. So it's the same thing you were doing, but now it's better and easier. That's the obvious one. It's because that's what everyone is doing. For example, if you have a chatbot, obviously you're going to use any technology. If you are a writer, obviously you're going to do that. So I think we'll see a pretty quick expansion on people who work on those specific ones. And then everything that is transactional is much harder because there are many small details that have to be right. One of the things that you see with any new technology, and this one is the case, is that it's 80% great, but unless you are 95%, you cannot do it.
Right. Yeah.
In the transactional ones. In the content creation ones, the marketing ones, that's not the case because it doesn't have to be perfect because 80% is typically already pretty good. No?
Okay, thank you for that. And there's Simone, milestones.
I think we're getting closer to personal dream of mine, and that is tech agnosticism. And because what we start seeing is and Juanjo is totally right. A lot of companies are not developing the AI part themselves. They're just building on top of existing systems such as ChatGPT. You made some example, Peter, at the very beginning with Expedia, OpenTable, like Booking.com did the same thing a few days ago, right? And so I think that in a few years, we will see a complete change in the vendor space. And the main the winner will be the more agnostic one, the one that can actually build on top of other systems. And I always say that the technology in hotels should not be so damn hard. It should be like an iPhone. You download an app. If you don't like it, you just uninstall it the day after, and you take another one. You cannot be really kidnapped by your tech, because otherwise you're taking care of your tech. You're not taking care of your guests, and that is always the problem, right? And to a certain extent, I think that systems such as ChatGPT and the fact that you can build plugin on top of those could bring us closer to the dream of tech agnosticism and a more plug and play industry in the hospitality space.
Brilliant. Yeah, very interesting. Let's. Oh yeah, Juanjo.
No, I was going to say, because I see that there's a couple of questions on the chat about the privacy and GDPR and all of that. And just to make a quick point about this, I think it's normal to have this concern because how is this even built? But I think it's actually pretty simple to approach. I don't think that GDPR applies a lot here because in typically you don't need to share personal data. The data you care about is not the data you can store in a database with a name, because you have that already. What you want is to have content that is unstructured. That's what AI does better, not something that is in a cell. And then I think the concern is more about the privacy of the data you're sharing. Because if you want to use AI, by definition, you have to feed information to AI. And that service is wherever in the world, and you don't know what they do with it. In their terms and conditions, they say they don't use it. So theoretically, you're covered. But then if you think you have in your high level of privacy in your content, then that is happening to everyone around the world. So people will come up with solutions in which you store the information on your site, and it never goes into somewhere else. And I can tell you that because we are in the same problem. When we create something, we are looking at this, and I think every company is looking at that. There are obvious next steps for GPT in general. That's and everyone is working on those. In a few months, they will be available. For example, that you can actually search on the internet. You mentioned that the current model stops in 2021. Obviously, that would be overcome. And then the other one is that I need to train it with my own data. That's the other obvious thing. And there are already some cases, and they will be out of like no code out of the box solutions to train systems with your own data. It's actually, once you know what to do, it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, I
think, but the way Simone mentioned something I think is key, which is that this technology at some point is going to be so prevalent that you don't even worry about it, because it's like electricity. You don't care about the cost of electricity or how it works because you know it works. It's a utility. So this is becoming a utility really quickly.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It will be interesting then to perhaps come back in the near future to discuss this further and see what has changed. Juanjo and Simone, we're extremely grateful for your time and your input today. We've really enjoyed the conversation, and you've done a brilliant job of capturing what is a very fast-moving area. Marie, would you like to make any closing comments?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's been a really extremely interesting discussion and exchange. I mean, certainly personally, I learned a lot, but I think it's opened up, such a number of conversation. I think you also put us some questions about questioning yourselves, what is hospitality? What do you want? So really, thank you also to Juanjo and Simone for bringing those consideration, this expertise. It's certainly not over. I'm sure there will be other conversation because also, I mean, you pointed, Peter, there are discussions here on the regulatory front in Europe in terms of how you regulate AI, and we just want to make sure we are also able to share insights and expertise on our sector also to the decision maker and understand what would be the implications. So really, thank you very much. Thank you to all the people who attended the webinar. It's been a really fascinating morning. So looking forward to continuing, and thank you to TOPOSOPHY for always your insights, your expertise, and really partnering with us. So thank you to everyone. And looking forward to continuing the conversation and seeing you soon.
Thank you, Marie. And just to check that if people want to receive the slides, it was HOTREC@hotrec.eu.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much to our panelists, Juanjo and Simone, and of course to our audience. And we look forward to joining you again soon. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.